makes no bones about it being a pro-Labour newspaper, and on the election day he exhorts his readers to vote for the Labour Party. But when it comes to the candidates, it tells them that this Labour candidate is not good for the following reasons. It makes a distinction there. So while sticking to their broad ideological commitment, they are not losing commitment to the leader. And that newspaper has gets funding from a foundation called the Scott Foundation. This Scott Foundation makes investments in other business ventures, makes profits, and gives that money to Guardian in order to smother its dependence on big advertisers. Now, something of this nature will have to be thought through in India as well. And there are big newspapers which can think through it. I'm not saying that you must start agitating for that. But I think what I'm trying to tell you is that it is not that this malaise is not curable. It is indeed curable. But what you need is, again I said, some tenets to your purpose. Now, see, this is something I really want to share with you. And this is the last point I want to flag before I resume my seat. You know, because debate in this country has ceased to be eclectic in terms of participation. There is a grave and present danger of thought being sought to be standardized on key issues. Thought is sought to be standardized on key issues. I'll give you one example. Rather, I'll give you two examples. And you know why this is happening? Because that's another theory. But let's first discuss this conspiracy to standardize thought. Take, for instance, the debate that happens after every terrorist incident. In no time, some Muslim organization or the other is sought to be blamed by our ace investigators, who till now have not convincingly cracked even a single case of terror attack. And it is lapped up by the competitive media without any questioning, without any sense of inequality. I don't know. You see, there's one name that comes up each time there is a terrorist attack, a chap called Bhatkal. Now, whether this Bhatkal is a phantom or what, that he does these things and gets away with it, is never caught. Then there is this Indian Mujahideen, which comes up every time. There is this Simi. So there are certain stock culprits who are bandied about in the media, and media merrily bandies them all. And tainting in the process a set of people who are as much Indians as you and I are. When it comes to discussing Pakistan, the television channels and some media organizations have come to the conclusion that Pakistan bashing is a sure bet for high TRPs. So let's go on doing it. Sometimes we do it validly, in the case of Sarpreet Singh. But then it has become now fashionable to bash Pakistan. And I am really very pained to see this, because this is what I used to see in the early 90s in Pakistan. India bashing. But I can understand India bashing by Pakistan because of the nature of their state, which is Britain. I'm not saying it's a failed state. I never used that word for a sovereign country. That the brittle nature of the state makes it mandatory for them to flaunt a threat in order to keep together the various provinces. But why do we need it? For what? India is not going to get balkanized. I don't think the inherent strength that this country has is itself an insulation from any kind of balkanization. But at the same time, we have to give people on the periphery in states like Kashmir and the Northeast a stake in the survival of India. And that has to be done by way of equitable economic development and distribution of wealth. That's another issue. But India is not facing any such threat. So we in the media, rather than presenting to the reader or the viewer a choice of arguments, are presenting a standardized thought, are trying to standardize opinion in India with regard to our minorities. We're trying to standardize opinion in India with regard to a neighboring country. And then another thing, which is very fashionable these days, that we are a weak state, that we are not giving a fitting riposte to China. No, let us be realistic. Don't raise popular expectations to the level that is not achievable. Do you want, for instance, at times, what is diplomacy, for instance? Diplomacy is not about abusing people. As somebody the other day defined diplomacy, saying that in diplomacy, what is diplomacy about? Diplomacy is about telling somebody to go to hell in a manner that he starts looking forward to the trip. Do it so beautifully and politely. Discretion is the essence of diplomacy, not valor. Atal Bihari Vajpayee pronounced as aar ya paar ki ladai, but the same Vajpayee understood the fallacy of it and within months extended the hand of friendship to Pakistan from Srinagar. So this whole conspiracy to standardize thought on key issues in this country has to be defeated. Because what makes our democracy durable, if not perfect, is the checks and balances. You name a weather and you have it in this country. You name a weather, you name a fruit and you have it in this country. You name an ideology and you have it in this country. And in a country like that, you want to standardize thought? Aren't you being suicidal in your approach? Just because the economies of some media houses have to boom. That should be, I think, contested at every level, and that should be repaired at every level. Contest and repair. Because it is the variety of thought in India which is the biggest, I think, guarantee or biggest insurance to continuing as a country with different views and different cultures and different backgrounds and different ideas. Now, having said this, I must conclude by saying that, I used to have a kind of a guru who was much elder to me. He was working for a Urdu newspaper. And because he was working for a Urdu newspaper, he wasn't a very celebrated journalist. But he was a cerebral journalist, if not celebrated. And, in the emergency period, he published in his newspaper a little couplet, which I think I must share with you to tell you that though there isn't any possibility of an emergency kind of situation in India ever happening again, no matter the statements you may hear from the opposition of the day. The bigger threat to journalism is from extra-state players, from corporate interests, from capital per se. We can't reject capital. We have to navigate it and tame it to the extent that it doesn't come to intrude on our freedoms. And he wrote, his name was Om Prakash Bharti. It was emergency. He wrote, and there is a bit of, please don't mind, there is some innuendo there, but it's just an innuendo. He wrote, Nangi padi hai samne, नंगी पड़ी है सामने खबर, उठता नहीं फिर भी कलम, नामवर सहाफी मर्दे कलम नामा निगार, खौफे सेंसर से सभी नामर्द हो गए. Now this situation is all about rendering media impotent. That is not being done by the state or the constitutional authorities. It cannot be done by the constitutional authorities anymore. But it is most certainly being done by big advertisers, and it's most certainly being done by people who can get away with dishing out threats. I know for sure that it's happening rampantly in the Northeast, where the underground groups don't allow journalists to operate freely. It's happening in Kashmir, where the tussle is between intelligence organizations and the militants. Either way, good journalism suffers. Truth is not honestly purveyed. But I can understand these exigencies. But I don't understand why people sitting in big cities should be compromising their honesty, should be not purveying facts as enshrined in the Constitution, as devolved upon them by the Constitution, which bestows on them this derived right of freedom of speech and freedom of press. I don't know why they can't do it. And that is where the real challenge lies. This negative side apart, on many other fronts, media is doing very well on economic, on civic issues, on our state of our hospitals, our dispensaries, our education system. There, I think the debate is very good and wholesome. But when it comes to certain issues which could be divisive, they aren't playing a positive role, and I think that they need to do some course correction. Thank you very much. I would appreciate if you want to ask some questions, because this practice of giving a speech and running away is not good. Surely many things which I have said, you may not agree with that. And if you don't agree, kindly get up and ask. And if you make a beginning today, you will continue to do that during your career as journalist. Never give up your right to question, and never abandon your responsibility to listen. That is the essence for learning on the job in journalism. Thank you so much.